Good morning. It is April 29th, 2020, and we are in Ezra today as we continue with our entire quarantine Bible study. Today we're in Ezra 4, and we're going to be learning about becoming the scared brave. And our thought is, I have my notebook way over here, God's work always succeeds. I'm also going to be reading from this because it's just heavy on my heart. So we're going to read this book a little bit too. So, I'm going to preface this by saying that last night we were attacked by houseflies. And I know sometimes I have noticed I talk with my hands and sometimes I get a little, watch, that will be the freeze frame. But currently I am like being invaded by flies. I don't know if you can see them or not, but they're like coming at me. So at any given moment, I'm gonna go like karate chop on them. I just feel like you should know that. All right, let's study God's word. So we are in Ezra. We are in my Encourage Bible. It's called Become the Scared Brave. I'm continuing with that scared brave theme. And it's in Ezra 4:5, which is on the other page of the devotional. And it reads, "Then the people who were already in the land discouraged the people of Judah and made them afraid to build." So that's the beginning verse. So I had forgotten the story of Ezra and Nehemiah, and then I have to go Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Psalm. Anyway, it's right in there. So in Ezra, I had Ezra and Nehemiah mixed up, and tomorrow we're going to be in Nehemiah. Heads up, because I got on a little trail, and it all comes together. So in Ezra, this leads up. This is like, you guys are going to be in exile for 70 years. That's where we get our verse Jeremiah 29:11 from that we love so much. We have all those things. But in Ezra, the first thing that they do when the people come back is and I didn't read all of Ezra, forgive me, I'm paraphrasing here and I could have some things wrong. They decide to build the temple first. So the very first order of business is building the temple. And they get in there and they've been in exile for all this time, so they were coming in as groups. So a little bit of people were working and then more people were coming. And doesn't that kind of sound familiar? Anyway, so different people were working, but the first thing they did was work on the church, the temple, Jerusalem. And while they were working on it, all these people were coming together who were there already going, y'all are crazy. Don't be building that church. Don't be building that temple. And we're going to get you. So they sent these letters to, I don't know, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, some big bad dude. So this big bad dude is like, what? These people are building a temple? They can't be doing that. Because politics, and they were just spinning their own cycle. So I know none of this seems at all familiar. I mean, how crazy, right? Anyway, so these guys don't want them to build the church. They write this letter to the big bad dude. The big bad dude is like, you're not doing that, because they say, oh, they're not going to pay their taxes. These people are just troublemakers. Don't let them build the church, temple. So they stop. And they stopped for, I think I have it right, they stopped for close to a year where they just didn't do it. And then, it's so cool, Darius is our big bad dude. So then Ezra comes and he's like, we're gonna build. We're gonna build because this is God's spot. We're gonna worship God here. We're going to do this. And this is the part. It's so cool. So at that point then, the people who don't want the temple, they're like, oh, we got you now. We want all your names. It actually says that. What are your names? They list the names and they send them to big bad dude Darius. And Ezra is so smart. He comes back and he's like, look in your files, look in your letters, look in your scribes. We can do this. And he knew exactly what to say. And then this part just cracks me up. Darius is like, yeah, these Jews building their church, they have every right to. Cyrus said they could. So if Cyrus says they can, they can. Not only that, we're going to give them everything that we stole from them before so they can put it back in their temple. And all you people who are mad at them, all your taxes are going to go for them because they're going to build this church and your money is going to go for it. I was like, oh, I'd forgotten that part. I love that part of this story. So they go from being in exile, which, hello, none of us want to be in exile, to coming back to their homeland and seeing their church, their temple just decimated, to building it as they're supposed to. They know they're supposed to. And all these people are ganging up on them and they're just getting beat up and beat up and beat up. And they just come back at them with the truth. And then God's like, yeah, not only that, we're going to make sure it's all paid for too. And I was like, oh, anyway, Ezra is a very exciting book. And if you take some time to read it, you can flip through it. If you don't want to read the whole thing, you don't have to. But today we're in Ezra 4. That's kind of where this story comes in. And I pretty much read to Ezra, I feel like I read till Ezra 7 or 8 is probably where I was. And then I went into where they had a revival after this, which is really cool, but also devastatingly sad. I don't think, the thing that I came away from that was like, you can't have good revival without like pain. So, because you have to give things up to have a revival. I feel like that's my own spouting. Let's go back to the devotional, which had nothing to do with everything I read to you or spoke to you. All it says, all our devotional is on, is Ezra 4 and 5. Then the people who were already in the land discouraged the people of Judah and made them afraid to build because they were big bullies. They were also using politics. They also bribed officials to act against them to frustrate their plans throughout the region of King Cyrus of Persia until the reign of King Darius of Persia. So Cyrus was the guy who said they could, and Darius is the big bad dude who was like, On those two verses, after that very exciting historical lesson I gave you, we get this devotional, The Scared Brave. And it is written by Chelle A Wilson. And I'm just going to point out a couple of things. It says, fear paralyzes us into inaction, and in many cases, ends our story. And I feel like that is just like, the saddest thing. So the reason I chose The Scared Brave today, which, I have lots of little sticky notes. I have so many things picked out for us, but we're just going to limit it to a couple of things. Aren't you happy? Is that I called my mom yesterday. Do you remember what I was trying to tell you? I called my mom yesterday and I'm like, I really need Tide. I am on my last bottle of detergent. I have only gone to this one store. I've only gone to 2 stores this whole time, and they've been really the small stores. And I'm like, I feel like I need to go into Walmart, and I don't want to. I'm really scared. But I really want to be brave, but I'm really scared. At this time right now that we're in this quarantine, it's like we've got this weird struggle. We have this crippling fear. I had a friend of mine said she had to run into Walmart for one thing, and she said, I went in, and it was the first time I've been in since this whole pandemic has hit, and you could actually taste the fear in the store. It was so much. And I'm like, I know I'm scared because it's a scary time, but I also really want to be brave. And it just kind of came in with this. I read Become the Scared Brave, and I'm like, I want to become the scared brave. So how do you do that? And she writes here, Chelle A Wilson writes, I am often afraid. I make peace with my fear, knowing that it is often intended to protect me. However, complacency or fear of growth can be a dangerous sin. When we fail to move in accordance with our divine appointments, we are willful and resistant. I am not saying that we will never be afraid. Rather, I am suggesting that in faith, we square our shoulders against the scary things. I am suggesting that we become the scared brave. Fear may accompany you on your journey, but fear is never your destination. And I really want us to concentrate on that. Fear is never our destination. Fear may be circumspect, but never lose faith. Hello. Never let doubt of any kind keep you from the things to which God calls you. God's work always succeeds. So in this, I was thinking about, God's work always succeeds. And yesterday I did go to the store and I went to Aldi's, which I had not been to since this whole thing had begun. And it was so good to get in there and get the things that I'm used to getting. And they had Tide. All I wanted was, but I really needed Tide. It wasn't all I needed. I needed a lot of things. But I really needed Tide. And Aldi had it, oddly. And then I went to get Isaac's birthday cake. And that store had Tide on sale. I know that seems trite, but I just felt like God was saying, listen, you stressed out over nothing. You've been praying about this shopping trip for days. You've worked yourself into a frantic fury. And here, look, I took care of it for you. Like, chill, girl. That's what I felt like God was saying to me yesterday. So I'm reading through Ezra. I read through it a little bit last night, and I was rereading it this morning just to go over it. And I was just getting more and more excited. And at the end of chapter 6, they have, they've built the temple. It's all been paid for by the people who were their big bullies. It's an exciting little bit of reading. And then they have the temple dedication and the Passover. And I don't know why, probably just because I miss church and I miss the getting together with the people. I was reading this, all of a sudden I just almost started crying. I mean, they get their church, they get their temple, and the first thing they do is they have the temple dedication, and then they celebrate the Passover, and they celebrate these other things that they haven't been able to celebrate for 70 plus years. It just is the first thing they do when they come to their new country is they do this. And this is the part that I just love. They observed the festival on unleavened bread for 7 days with joy, because the Lord had made them joyful, having changed the Assyrian king's attitude toward them so that he supported them in the work on the house of the God of Israel. They observed the festival of unleavened bread. We're all about baking bread right now. For 7 days with joy, because the Lord had made them joyful. And God's work will always succeed. God's always going to do what he's going to do. Nothing is going to thwart that. And God is going to give us joy because the Lord has made us joyful. It was so good. I read it and I was like, I just love it. So I feel like I just looked at the time. I've really made this a very long one. I really feel like we need to check this book out. Maybe I'll hold on to it. It's just the first day one. It says God is not old. And I just can't get it out of my head today. So I'm going to end this video and I will probably just read this real fast. So if you do want to hear that devotional, you can. But tomorrow we're in Nehemiah. Ezra is probably written, I don't know. We're not going to get into it. Tomorrow is Nehemiah and it's very exciting. I am very excited about tomorrow. So see you back probably in this room again tomorrow. To end our video, I'm just going to end one small section of the devotional. And then I did record the whole devotional, so I'll have that posted too. But I just really felt like I was should add this to the end of this one. So this is from Everyday Holy by Melanie Schenkel. It's on day 1 called God is Not Old, and the verse is Ecclesiastes 3:11. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. Ecclesiastes 3:11. So I'm skipping this part, skipping most of this, and just coming down here and here. Basically, on some days, I'm the definition of a mess. My point is that I don't have it all together. And I have days that just really stink. But I try not to focus on those things because most of the time, I try to refrain from hosting my own party full of woe and pity. A few weeks ago, I sat across the room from our former housekeeper, Kata. She is 67 years old and has cleaned houses for most of her life. A month earlier, she and her husband lost their home and much of what they owned in a house fire. They have no insurance. Yet I sat there and listened to Kata tell me in broken English how blessed she felt and how God has been faithful to provide help through her entire ordeal. She looked at me with joy in her eyes and said, "Melanie, God is not old. He is still working." How much do I love that she said, God is not old. It totally makes me think of when God asks Moses, "Is the Lord's arm too short?" Numbers 11:23. God is not too old, and his arm is not too short. I've been in a season of life where I often feel easily overwhelmed. After my conversation with Kata, I got on my knees and prayed about all my fears, doubts, and worries. Why don't I trust you the way I should? Why do I go back to that place of relying on my own power? Why do I let fear overtake me? When will I be the person I wish I could be? I didn't get an answer. But a few days later, I was walking my dogs down to an empty field by our house to let them run. I stood there watching them and noticed one lone bluebonnet sprouting up in the middle of the field. I know from past years that in another week, that entire field will be covered in bluebonnets. But for now, there's just that one. I felt God say to me in this still, small place in my heart, "My girl, that's how it is sometimes. After a long winter, spring doesn't happen all at once. It happens one flower at a time. I make all things beautiful, one flower at a time." And that was the reminder I needed that God is not old. He is always at work, even when it may not seem obvious at first.